Hi, Theater Philadelphia fam. We are here with Sharice Soltis and Mia Donata Rocchio, who are both very dear to my heart educators, artists, and friends. We're going to talk today about the state of art education and teaching artistry throughout Greater Philadelphia community, and what that means, what it looks like, things that we have been very excited to see, and things that we are hoping to see in the future because we're talking about the future, we're teaching the future. I'm gonna let Mia and Cherise introduce themselves. And what they do and the work, who they've worked with, and all their. They can talk a little bit about their kiddos that they work with and things like that. And then we have a few questions. So who wants to go first? Mia or Cherise?
Mia, your name comes earlier in the alphabet.
Oh, that's a very good deductive method, Therese. Guess it's me then. Hi everybody. My name is Mia. I use she, they pronouns. I have been a performer and a teaching artist and arts educator in Philly for um, almost 6 years now, which is wild. And I work as a freelance arts educator, so I've worked with many different arts organizations, nonprofits, and theater companies in the city, working with students and youth, um, and also doing some um, arts based projects with individual groups of students. So, Sabria and I actually worked on a project with the Painted Bride Art Center called Ubuntu Kids, where we worked with a small group of students in the North Philly area and generated a immersive gallery with them where we had them imagine neighborhoods and living communities that they wanted to see more of in their communities and spaces. And then we worked with them to create miniature houses and imaginative spaces that represented those visions that they had. So I've done lots of youth-based projects like that where we try to advocate for getting students paid for their artwork, just the way we would pay professional artists to validate their artistry. So that's something I'm really invested in.
And
Cherise?
me, okay. Hi, my name is Sharice. I use she, her pronouns. I do a lot of what Mia does. If you divide 6 years by two, you get to 3 years, which is how long I've been working in Philly. I moved here for grad school. And ever since then, I have been sort of moving in and out of various education organizations, various companies that I perform with, writing stuff sometimes, sound designing stuff at other times. My big thing is just figuring out all the various ways that we can tell our stories, telling our stories as adults, telling our stories as youth. Um, and so that's kind of my stuff. I'm the program director of Yes and Collaborative Arts, which is in Germantown. So that is a lot of the work that I do is with kids who live close-ish to Germantown, but they kind of come from all over. A good amount of them come from West Philly, um, and I live in West Philly. So yeah, that's me. Still learning the lay of the land, but happy to be here.
Yeah, and like I said, they're two of my favorite art educators and teaching artists in Philly. I work very closely with both of them. Prior to my coming into Theater Philadelphia as a director, I did a lot of work with youth curation and ethnography with both Sharice and Mia, and very excited to talk to them about kind of what they see the future of kind of working with youth in Philly and providing them with theater education. My first thing is, do y'all have a vision in the future what you see, access to arts education being for youth? If we were in a utopia of some sorts of, arts education happening and access to art. What are some things that you see in that future?
Whew, a big one. I feel like, I think about this just so frequently. Uh, and, I working with the group of students I work with right now, one of the groups in North Philly. Um, I think like one of the things that I talk about with those students is like some of them, that's an after school program that's like general programming. So some of them have all different types of interests and things that they like doing. Some of them are really into sports. Some of them are really into science and music and various things. So they're not all just there for theater or storytelling or movement, which I do like movement and devising with them once a week. But the thing that's really cool is we have these great conversations about like how the games we play and the work we're doing can connect them to themselves and to the people around them and the communities around them in ways that helps them reach their goals as people. And so in thinking about that, just around like, at first that group of kids, like some of them were like, oh, like theater, like I don't want to do that. But once they understood how learning these skills that we're learning as quote unquote theater artists or through the activity of theater is helping them gain other skills that uh, that do pertain to their larger goals just as humans in the world, then that kind of activates their interest in it and their willingness to participate. And so in terms of accessibility, I think like also just opening and broadening and making it transparent to kids, like the goals and functions of arts programming, and also that inside of arts programming and how we advertise and market that it's not just like a vehicle to turn your child into a performer, but that there's so many other skills and attributes and things that they gain through practicing and playing in this way.
Yeah. That's a good question about our vision. I think there's a lot of different parts to the vision. The first thing that came to mind is that really I would love for there to be ways for kids to have access to lessons and things that they're interested in at an affordable and or free rate. Um, some of our students very much want to get into the nitty gritty specifics of an art form, but the barrier is money. They cannot afford it. And I think that's not fair. Because, it's Viola Davis. She was like, the only thing that separates black women from white women is opportunity. And yeah, the only thing that really separates the kids who go on to have access to all these other things is that opportunity to get it. And so I'm always looking for ways that we can bridge those gaps and make for a better world. Whether you want to stay in theater and the arts, or if this was just an experience that empowered you, so that this is the way that we can collaborate as a group. That is the most important things, or those are the more important things to me.
Yeah, yeah. And what I love about what you both are talking about is you're talking about making it affordable for youth to, affordable and accessible for youth to, access arts education in and outside of school settings. But also, at the same token, uh, we have to talk about the way in which arts educators and teaching artists are looking for steady work and for to be able to afford to provide those free programs and things like that, at ways that we can live and we can function as well, um, so that the kids don't feel like we're coming there like, I don't make enough money to do all this. But we don't do it for the money or for the rate. Most of the time, we do it because we have the passion and love to teach, and to pass on, our education. are there difficulties of being an arts educator and a teaching artist in Philly or beyond that you think are relevant in conversation that you see happening in conversation in your respective networks?
Yes.
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
there are lots of difficulties. As you know, I mean,
absolutely.
it's like, it's we're facing a lot of the similar challenges that teachers in the classroom are facing, which is we're looking at burnout from giving all that you can give and it not being enough, and then also not getting the pay to reflect what a world of would be enough would look like. Um, the lack of resources available to the students that, again, then the teacher takes on their back and tries to supplement is definitely a challenge. The kids, I've said this before and I still stand by it. Kids today are like drastically different than they were 5, 10 years ago.
Mm.
Um, and a lot of what we're doing is adjusting to whatever this new normal is. But the COVID years really hurt most of the, probably all of the children from a developmental standpoint, from a social standpoint. And so those were crucial years that we lost, um, that we can't get back. And so we have to figure out how can we give you as much preparation for entering in whatever the next step is for you, um, but also do it in a way that feels supportive and appropriate for where you are. So yeah, there's definitely challenges and
Mm.
difficulties.
Yeah. Yeah, just kind of like jumping off of that and also like I feel like this is so innately tied to your first question, Sabria, to vision, right? Because a lot of what we've talked about so far for me comes down to value, like the way that we value art and educators in this society, and there, there's like the highest tier of like celebrity and mainstream arts culture that gets a lot of the money and the funding. However, like on this everyday artist path and track and like community artist, like organizing community arts for that are accessible and affordable to students, to youth, and to adults, is finding that funding is very difficult, and finding ways to make that sustainable is very difficult. And for me, that
Mhm.
comes down to because there isn't a high value placed on those things. And so that's not where the funding is. And so, like, both in vision and in what's difficult, right, is like finding that sustainability and finding sustainability personally and financially, like in terms of my own financial well-being and sustainability, but then also in the community. Like I've worked in so many programs where it's like, well, we got a grant this one time for this program, so we can afford to pay you for these 3 months, and then who knows if we'll get this funding again, and then that also makes it so it's not consistent in the community, which is limiting accessibility and again limiting value, which I think is tied into the way that we perceive the arts. Like if we're perceiving that, oh, if you're pursuing the arts, that means you want to be on Broadway, or that means you want to be a Hollywood star. If those are the only two vehicles for quote unquote success in terms of artistry, then that's really limiting value and choice and option for what arts can look like.
Yeah. And what does that say to, our youth that are looking at us? If we say this is the barrier of this is what success looks like, versus the actual people who are teaching you or guiding you or being in front of your face, what does that say about how they regard and look to, appreciation, for the
Yes.
things that we do, Um, yeah, I think those are very like great points to bring up is, the difficulty of, yes, the funding is limited and the perspective and the view of our value in education is very kind of like tested every day and every year as we get closer to different political and social impacts that are happening. how do we, also structure the way in which we're like, hey, I'm still showing up despite these challenges, right? Is there a word of encouragement that you give to teaching artists um, who maybe at that point of burnout or that point of like, I don't know why the heck I am coming to teach these kids every week, you know, um, or
Yeah.
creating these programs and things like that?
Whew. Sharice.
Oh, okay. Um,
You were going to
uh,
talk and I interrupted you.
no, no, no. My word of encouragement is to always remember our why. And sometimes remembering our why means I love to do this and it means so much to me to do this. And also, if you are burning out, sometimes you do have to sort of take yourself out of that equation. Um, do some healing and then come back when you're able to really do it, because it's a disservice to you and it's a disservice to the kids if you are, burning out and you're like holding on, but at the same time, like the kids in our perfect world, the kids deserve to have educators who aren't burned out, and the educators deserve to not be burned out as well. So I think you have to figure out what is the feasible way that you can exist within this and really give it your all and also go home. you know because we can't do this work without you. And what does that mean? For you to both prioritize you and the work, and actually truly balance that. Um so that would be my suggestion. I think it starts at home. You have to take care of you, and then you can go out and you can take care of other people. And the kids will love you the more for it. And even if that's like, okay, maybe I have to reduce my blah blah blah, but I know for a fact that I can come here one day a week and I can show up for them in that way, and then I can really like it really all comes back and gets back to you tenfold when you were starting from home first. That's what I think.
Oh, Cherise! Say it all again. That's.
I really think it starts with you.
Yes, I mean honestly, like you really summed it up. And I'll speak from my personal experience, like Sabria, when you say like, those days when you're like, why am I here? Or I just don't know if I have this to give to this room full of 68 screaming middle schoolers today.
Hmm.
And like it can, like you can get to this place where, yeah, you're in a position where you're working, where you're teaching so frequently, you're moving from job to job, you're balancing that logistic nightmare alone of like scheduling all the different contracts and like, piecing this lifestyle together, like just the labor of that in and of itself costs something. And then
Hmm.
showing up and bringing your full self costs something. So really, Cherise, what I hear you speaking to is what I learned the very hard way. So hopefully, if there are teaching artists out there a decade behind me, you can learn from my mistakes. But that to set those boundaries, baby, those beautiful, bountiful boundaries. And it can be really hard because we also exist in a society, but also I think the arts community, possibly especially. I mean, it's, this is the field that I'm in, so I guess I'm biased because this is the perspective I have, but I think there's a lot of pressure. I think there's a lot of pressure to achieve, to meet certain goalposts, to like, especially as femme bodies, like as performers, to like reach a certain level by a certain time before you like quote unquote age out or whatever that means. So especially if you're doing multiple things, like if you're performing and you're a playwright and you're, um, you know, a singer and a musician or whatever it is that you're working on, like balancing your craft, your artistry, and your teaching artistry. For me, they really inform each other, making sure that you're investing into both of those things.
Yeah.
Um, and like Cherise said so perfectly, it starts at home and really like the days where I have days that I take off are it's getting a little better, but especially in the beginning when I started that practice, like so stressful. Really, I spent the whole day just so stressed out, like looking at my computer from across the room, just like having a stare down between me and my computer. So, it can be really hard to like unplug and invest in yourself and invest in your self-care. But without that, we have nothing to give our students and we have nothing to give our craft. And so um, I think really committing to yourself in that way, like Cherise said so perfectly. For me, I learned the hard way and just makes the practice more sustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate both of you for sharing your own journeys as well as, this message to educators, teaching artists that are coming into the fold. I think it's an important message that a lot of people really um, don't hear. Oftentimes, we experience the message before we actually like hear it in a lot of ways, and that can be very hard for um, young teaching artists who are passionate, who want to do everything, who want to be there. And we witness them, and we try to say to them, "Hey, this might not be um, your best shot. You might need to chill out or have a moment. It's important to also have a network of fellow teaching artists who get that for you, who say to you, "Hey, I don't think you need to take a time out right now, or I need you to examine. Are you committed to this work right now? Do you have the space and the room to stretch and to do those things?" Um, because sometimes that can be very lonely. That process of being a teaching artist um, can be very lonely when
Yeah.
you're doing multiple contracts, and building that network is really important. There's many different theater artist networks that are popping up now all across Philly theater, um, and just Philly and period that are kind of looking to support and to nurture teaching artists as cohorts, as support groups. Um, but we'll talk later about what that means for like work and opportunities and spaces, and the limitations of um, I think one of the things I'm really excited about is in this conversation having people witness two educators that I know who have experienced multitudes of contracts, of spaces, of places and from program directing to designing your own program to doing those sort of things, and how all of that can be different narratives in that work.
Mm.
So, Mia and Sharice, I thank y'all for coming and to talking with me, as usual, about our plights, our dedication to these kids, and their futures, and loving them into the artists they're going to become. Any final words you want to say before we hop off?
Yeah, sure. Shout out to the other teaching artists, and the teaching artists who came before me, who inspired me to do this work. I would not be here without them, without the support of my family and my community. So, we talked about having to set the boundaries and having to determine what you can and cannot do. And also, it is a great privilege to do this work. And I think it is nice of us to also take the time to be thankful for the opportunity to do that, to work with one another, to influence young people and help them, and lift them up in the ways that we can. So yeah, I'm
Mm.
really grateful to be here.
Yeah. Again, Cherise said it so perfectly. Every day I feel so deeply honored to be able to work with these youth and also to co-create with them. I think I think a big turning point for me in my teaching artistry was when I realized that I didn't have to have all the answers, and that's not what my students were asking for from me. They were asking for, some of my experience and some of the things that I've learned in the few years I have on them. But I am not. no one teaching artist, no one teacher is the end all be all of information and resource. And so really opening ourselves up to learning from our students just as much as they learn from us. And you know, they, in that way, they have really become my hope in a big way. I see what they desire to create and what their visions are, and it's my deep privilege to be able to uplift those and connect with other people who want to do the same. And so thank you so much, Sabria, for hosting us today and generating this vibrant community of teaching artists.
Thank y'all. Theater Philadelphia is looking forward to even more welcoming of new artists, teaching artists, community into our space, into how we move forward as a Philly theater community. I'm thankful to have what one of my kids calls Miss Sabria's children or chillins who follow me from program to program, opportunity to kind of connect and to experience new things and to gain access. And so we hope that this talk, this conversation inspires you to reach out to, your teaching artists in your community and to say, how can I support you? How can I show up for you? How can I volunteer to, be a support system for you? But also, for those who listen and who have the funds or the things to support teaching artistry, look up your local organizations like Yes and Collaborative Arts, like Artwell Philly, like the list goes on. Treehouse Books, different places that you can donate your time and especially your money to having teaching artists and art access come back into these schools, into these out of school programs, and across the board, Greater Philadelphia community. And so we appreciate y'all. And until next time, until next year for Appreciation Week, peace out.